Our guest speaker has turned her passion into her mission. Imagine a world where the beauty of our oceans, rivers, and lakes is untarnished by the sight of plastic waste. A world where our health and the well-being of our most vulnerable women and children is not compromised by the products we use daily. This is the moment for us to dive deep beneath the surface of the plastic crisis. Enter Tami Mulcahy, a steadfast advocate for all things water. With a heart as vast as the oceans she aims to protect. Tami's journey began at the grassroots with GreenTownLosAltos, where she educated communities on stormwater pollution and championed policies for residential rain capture. Her concern for the marine ecosystem propelled her to a global platform with ESRAG, steering the Plastic Solutions Task Force. Tami's advocacy doesn't stop at the water's edge. Her background as a physical therapist brings a unique perspective, spotlighting the dire health ramifications of plastic pollution. Her voice, both as an advocate and a singer-songwriter, resonates with the urgency of her message. Her song, Part of the Solution, is not just a magnificent melody, it's a rallying cry for all of us to stand up, take action, and become part of the solution. To discuss plastic, the health and global impact, please join us in welcoming Tami Mulcahy.
Wow, that was quite an introduction. Thank you so much. Let me start by saying the three words that make me are songwriter, mother, and nature. That's my three words. So hello, everyone, and good morning. First of all, I want to start by thanking Patricia and Susan and Anastasia, who's not here, but thank you for inviting me to come here and speak. I thought I'd start with a little humor here. Let me see if I can move this down a little bit. No? Okay, can't do that. So I thought I'd start with somewhat of a humor, and that this is my friend Myrtle the turtle. And I did get involved because the ocean is my happy place. And so I wanted to give a voice to Myrtle and all marine life who hate plastic, but for some reason it's more and more always on the menu. In order to do that, I got involved in ESRAG, which is Environmental Sustainability Rotary Action Group. And I am co-chair of the Plastic Solutions Task Force of that. And it was really important to me when I was first asked to speak at EarthX in Dallas last year, in the heart of oil country. And I went to high school and college in Texas, so I understood oil country. And I really wanted to have data and not my emotions tell the story. I wanted data. So peeling back the layers of information on plastics is quite a task, but that's one I wanted to take on. Now, not all plastic has a dark side. Kudos to innovations in medicine and things like bike helmets. But beyond the litter, beyond the label of an environmental problem, when it comes to plastic, what deserves the equal airtime is the impact of plastic on human health, the health of all living things, and the health of future generations. So here we go. First of all, as most of you might know, plastic comes from fossil fuels. And then certain chemical additives are put in there to make the plastic have its certain characteristics, like how hard it is, how malleable it is. Some plastic, as you know, looks almost like glass. And the problem is that some of these chemical additives were after the fact, meaning after they were already out on the market, they were proven to be dangerous. For example, most of you have probably seen BPA free written on many products. That is a bisphenol A. And for a long time, it was used to make things like baby bottles. And scientists only stumbled on the fact that bisphenol A was an endocrine disruptor. So what is an endocrine disruptor? Endocrine disruptors are basically called hormone disruptors. They are manufactured chemicals that mimic hormones that even in the tiniest amount can block or shift the endocrine system. And that is certainly not good. The Society for Endocrinology states that many plastics contain and leach hazardous chemicals, including EDCs, that are harmful to human health. These chemicals disturb the body's hormone systems and can cause cancer, diabetes, reproductive disorders, and here's the biggie for me, neurological impairment of developing fetuses and children, and of course, the ugly word, death. Endocrine disrupting chemicals, according to the NIH, represent a health threat that should not be underestimated, especially when dealing with human pregnancy. So there are bisphenols, and then there are PFAS chemicals. These are what are called forever chemicals because they accumulate in the body and they can take years, if ever, to get out of the body system. PFAS chemicals are also endocrine disruptors, and they do a lot of damage, from liver damage to developmental delay and cancer. And PFAS chemicals are in things like carpets, clothing, fabrics. They are in oil and grease resistant coatings. For example, when you get that thing of microwave popcorn, inside you will see a plastic coating. And sometimes in your coffee bags, you'll see this. And that's when you need to think a PFAS chemical in that liner. It also, if you get a hamburger and it is wrapped in a piece of paper that has a little shiny coating in it, again, think PFAS. So we have PFAS chemicals, and then we have phthalates, which are basically found in everything from cosmetics, lotions, soaps, particularly anything with a fragrance. They are in children's baby teething chews and plastic toys. They are in vinyl flooring, and once again, to food packaging. This is a study that showed that 81% of fast foods tested had phthalates in them. Now, phthalates are associated with hyperactivity, aggression, attention deficit. Phthalates are so prevalent that they were actually have been suggested by researchers to, as a class, be removed from use because they are so disruptive. Now, the problem with these chemical additives is that there's only over 86,000 different chemicals that can be blended together that can make plastic. And thus, with all these chemical additives, we play the game of whack-a-mole, trading a devil that we know for a devil that we don't know. And there's no way that researchers can get ahead of the curve. The mass production of the plastic started in the 1950s. It was the birth of the throwaway culture. Plastic was celebrated because it made life so much easier. Today, if plastic was an industry, it would be the 5th largest emitter of greenhouse gases. Plastic and climate change go hand in hand. Today, the world generates 400 million metric tons of plastic waste, and that is set to explode in the near future. And the US produces 42 million metric tons of plastic waste per year. Again, set to grow exponentially in the next few years. The problem with this plastic waste is that as it degrades, it breaks down into microplastics and nanoplastics, and it releases a whole lot of those chemicals that I was just talking about. It releases them into the environment. Now, here is from 2019 is a waste management picture globally. And as you see the arrow there, you'll see the United States. And it shows that 73% of our US plastic waste goes to landfill. That's 73% of 42 million metric tons. Now, 19% of it is incinerated. But as we saw with the recycling fire a couple of years ago in Indiana, that when things go bad, a lot of toxic ash is spewed into the environment. And I'm going to come back to this in just a moment. 4% is recycled. Now that figure surprises most people. It's 9 to 10% in globally, but the US has been hovering about 4 to 5%. So with the whole concept that if a piece of paper or a piece of plastic has a number on it, that it can be or will be recycled, that was a narrative, a marketing narrative. And it did two things. It shifted the plastic waste responsibility away from the manufacturer. And it developed the consumer mindset that it was our responsibility to deal with it. And it fostered the relentless consumption of plastic because we could feel good about the fact that we knew, or we had the notion, that it was being recycled. And finally, in the United States, about 4% is what is called mismanaged, at high risk of entering the ocean or inland waters. And what's really sad here is that globally, it's 22% of plastic waste that is mismanaged. And on that note, 11 to 15 million metric tons of plastic enters our oceans every year. And ocean plastic is on track to triple by 2040. So I want to make a special point here in that we have to dispel the myth that the thinking that plastic is a coastal issue. Now, sure, coastal beaches is where we typically see those pictures of plastic on the beach. But inland rivers all over the world carry tons of plastic from upstream communities to the ocean, from high in the Himalayas down through Bangladesh, which is just inundated with plastic, from the Mississippi River and the inland watersheds and down into the Gulf. So no matter where a person lives, near the coast or far inland, plastic goes somewhere. And before I move on, I would encourage you all to search online for Cancer Alley, right here in the United States along the Mississippi River. And also look up a woman by the name of Diane Wilson. She's a 4th generation shrimp boat captain who took on Formosa Plastics, which is a large chemical company that was spewing waste and plastic pellets called nurdles into the Gulf Coast. She is the Erin Brockovich of plastic. So now on to microplastics and nanoplastics. This is a zooplankton, also can be called krill. They are microscopic in size, and they are the building block of the ocean food chain. And if you look closely, you'll see a blue line running through it. That is not a vein. They do not have veins. That is a plastic synthetic fiber. Microplastics and nanoplastics are in our water, the air, the soil, and now, unfortunately, in our blood. I was just looking yesterday at some studies on this stuff, and there's a recent study that just came out a few days ago, and I'm just going to read it here, that more than 200 patients undergoing surgery found that nearly 60% had microplastics or even smaller nanoplastics in a main artery. Microplastics are showing up in the plaques removed from clogged arteries, and people with microplastics in their plaque samples also had higher biomarkers for inflammation. This is out of Scientific America. So this stuff is scary. Microplastics are found in the placentas of unborn babies and in mother's breast milk. And there is mounting evidence of microplastics crossing the blood-brain barrier. So it's no wonder, because we are surrounded by plastic, from the carpets in our homes to the synthetic turf fields full of chemicals to the clothes we wear. 60% of our clothing is made from fossil fuel. So take a moment right now to just look at what you're wearing. If you're not wearing natural fibers like cotton, linen, hemp, or wool, you're wearing plastic. And I used to wonder why you don't put your plastic exercise clothes in the hot water. It's because they're plastic. Why you don't put them in the dryer? Because they're plastic. They get all crunchy. And that's a perfect segue to say chemicals leach with heat. It makes you wonder if it's also why you don't put your plastic in the microwave. And that includes don't put salsas or tomatoes in your plastic, because chemicals bleach. And back to the issue of your exercise clothes, it makes you wonder if we should be exercising in oil-based exercise clothes, including our socks. Here is a study from the Center of Environmental Health, who sent legal notices to 9 companies after extensive testing showed their socks made for babies, children, and adults could expose someone to up to 31 times the safe limit of the chemical BPA. So, jars, think glass. Jars are the little black dress of food. Everything looks good in them. Got to keep some levity going here with all this heavy stuff. The key takeaway here is natural fibers in our homes, from our furniture and our carpets. Did you know that 90% of our carpet is made from synthetic fibers? That's where a lot of our water bottles go. And they have stain-resistant coatings on them. And as we talked about earlier, those coatings usually have chemicals that are very detrimental. The key, don't let your babies or grandchildren play on this stuff. The key takeaway here is transition to toxic-free homes and clothing, personal products. Okay, let's take a deep breath and move on. So let's go on to the global impact of plastic consumption. And this is the hardest part for me. It is the out of mind, out of sight, out of mind concept with plastic. For years, much of the plastic that we consumed got baled up, put on shipping containers, and shipped to other countries. In 2018, the United States shipped 788,000 metric tons of plastic, offshoring or outsourcing it, whatever you want to calling it, sending it to less advantaged countries, typically the global South, where children and people of poverty get paid next to nothing to sort through this plastic, to find the plastic that might be usable. They are subjected to the harmful chemicals that I mentioned earlier, leach out in the heat and the elements. And in this picture, you'll see a little girl carrying a plastic bag. Research on plastic bags show that they produce 250 to 15,000 chemical compounds when exposed to sunlight, salt, and water. The plastic that can't be recycled, and that's a lot of it, often is disposed of by open burning. They don't have the incineration processes or the machineries that we have. These humans are exposed to the toxic ash that goes up in the air, falls on their vegetation, their animals eat it. This is just not right. Plastic has created, this is in the Philippines, plastic has created a humanitarian crisis in the global South. Now, the United States is not alone in contributing to this crisis, but I firmly believe in what's called the Basel Convention, in which over 191 countries, including the EU and the United Nations, have signed to restrict the export of plastic waste. However, the United States has not ratified its commitment, meaning it hasn't done what it needs to do to fully commit. And I think it would be a whole different ballgame if here in the United States, we had to keep our plastic on our own land, disposing of it on our own land, so that we could all see the byproduct of our consumption. So now, how do we stem the plastic tide? Well, regulations would help. First off, chemicals are not innocent until proven harmful. We need a paradigm shift where chemicals are proven safe before going out on the market. We need a coordinated global effort such as the Plastic Treaty that hopefully will have teeth in it. And what it will hope to do is to curb the use of single-use plastic, which is the low-hanging fruit, which is the primary thing that the World Health Organization says that's choking our planet. So then we have EPR, which puts the responsibility on the companies. Right now, companies are churning out this plastic and putting the responsibility, as I mentioned earlier, of what to do with it on consumers on waste management. EPR is a paradigm shift where companies take responsibility to design a product from the get-go with the end of life in mind to minimize environmental impact. And then finally, here we have our individual accountability. We, the consumers, have to stop buying plastic. We have to put the end result of plastic consumption in the forefront of our mind. We have to put the health of our babies, our own health, the litter, the trash pickers, Myrtle the turtle, and all the marine life. We have to put that in the forefront of our minds when we are out making decisions, when we're shopping, and we become a conscious buyer. We stop and we ask ourselves, hey, here's a mayonnaise jar in plastic. Here's one in glass. Here's a mustard jar in plastic. Here's one in glass. Sparkling water. Here's one in plastic and here's one in glass. And on that note, nanoplastics, where do they come from? Direct exposure. When you open a sparkling thing of water, that's plastic. There's little nanoplastics that are being released into the air right there and then. Let's see. I have to mention innovation. It's too much to go in today, but there's all sorts of things happening. People, very smart people working on this stuff. But let's just say that we need improved waste collection systems around the world. Think of that 22% of mismanaged plastic. And we need to invest in the creation of plastic materials that are truly recyclable. Right now, they're so layered with different chemicals and different processes, they can't break it down to be reusable. And as the saying goes, though, in the meantime, we have to change habits from old habits to new habits, and we have to ditch plastics. We have to ditch all the single-use disposable plastics, especially those containers that you see coming out of restaurants. They are not recyclable no matter what number they have on them. And I want to say something about plastic water bottles. There was a study, excuse me, there was a study that came out recently from Frontiers in Chemistry that analyzed 259 water bottles sold in several countries. And these were leading products. And they found that 93% of them contained microplastics. And there was just a new paper released in January of 2024 by the National Academy of Sciences, found about 240,000 particles are in the average liter of bottled water, most of which were nanoplastics, which are the most dangerous. They're most apt to infiltrate the body. So the concept of healthy water sold in plastic bottles, that was another marketing narrative. So it's time to rethink every purchase. There are now alternatives to almost every plastic thing that you consume, be it a bar of soap, be it toothpaste. As a matter of fact, many common toothpaste holes contain microplastics. Shampoo bars, toothpaste tablets, all these things are all available. For grief's sakes, please ditch those body wash bottles. Find alternatives, don't end up in our bodies. And if you do have to buy something in plastic, choose number 1 or 2, which is the most commonly recycled plastic. But the future is re-up, refill. We have 2 refill stations here where I live down on the peninsula. I think Grover Collective in the San Francisco is going in this direction, and there is one in Berkeley, because I think most of you are all Northern California. And basically what you do is you take in your mason jars, your empty, Bona water, a Bona floor cleaner, your silicone bags, whatever you have, and you basically fill them up there. You're buying in bulk. It's back to the future where we used to buy in bulk. And for example, you see the big laundry jug there in the middle. I've used the same one now for the last couple years. I just keep taking it in and refilling it. So now, I know you all aren't in Rotary, but I got involved because I wanted to understand things on a global impact, on a global level, and also how we can affect things globally. And I just want to share with you some positive news of things that are being done. So this is a Rotary Club in Illinois that combined with a Rotary Club in India. And they raised money to purchase machinery that is now processing 2 tons of plastic waste per year. They hired a bunch of kids in the community to run this, and they shred it, and that's used to pave paths in the area. Lavington Eco Company and a club in Kenya, they cleaned up the river there, and again, shredded the plastics for making pathways. Paulsville Rotary Club has collected well over 50,000 pounds of single-use plastic, and it's being reused through the Trex company. I think you're all aware of Trex decks. That's basically a wood product sand that's mixed in with plastic. So communities are all over the country now. I know we're starting this one here where I live in Los Altos, where you collect this stuff and Trex will pick it up and take it back, keep it out of the landfill. And that, locks that plastic up. And then you get a nice bench for it. There are people who, and these are things that any club, Kiwanis Club, Lions Club, PTAs, schools, all these people can do. Here's a Solano Beach. They actually went out and developed a community lending library. So people didn't use single-use plastics for their events, and they loaned them out. And I haven't yet mentioned sachets. Does everybody know what a sachet is? A sachet is actually those little packets of soy sauce and mustard and ketchup that you get for free here in the United States. Well, they started as a way to offer people who couldn't afford to buy anything larger in areas that are lower income. And they are a multi-billion-dollar business. These packets are so laden with chemical layers that they can't be recycled, and they are a massive trash problem. So all over the world, people are starting to build them into eco bricks for building homes. And this is a creative way to solve some of the plastic problem. So one of the things that you can do is when you're out and about and you're buying your takeout food, 2 things. We love the local Chinese place, but we tell them, please don't put our pot stickers in a plastic tub. Please just put it in a paper carton. And we also hand back the soy sauce that we don't need. Don't just take it for granted and then throw it out. Yes, sachets. $9 billion market, 855 billion of them are sold per year. So this is a list of things I put together for Rotary, but I share them because I think that many people have belonged to community organizations, and we all can develop these within our communities. And one is to, whatever you are doing, establish a plastic-free club policy. I mean, you have your meetings once a month that are in person. Make them plastic-free. If you have partnership clubs that you work with, form a club or cluster of clubs to help each other transition to plastic-free, create a community lending library. And here's a biggie, because I know you are probably all involved in different community events. Become a trash talker. Basically, what you do is people are clueless about sorting their trash. You see this everywhere, right? I mean, you see people that where it says recycle and compost, and then all trash is just thrown in there. Staff's waste sorting at community events for teachable moments. Very important. Start a plastic film collection program, like working with the Trex company. If you do any fundraising, a great thing is to find an area like in a park where you can put in a refill station. And luckily, most of the airports are now starting to do these, and I welcome those. And I tell you that the statistics of plastic, recycled, reusable water bottles has gone astronomically up. And millions of people are buying them, which shows us it's trending positive, especially amongst younger people. Work with your local businesses or chamber of commerces to transition businesses, especially restaurants, away from plastic takeout stuff. And I wanted to share just a couple really exciting things that I am personally working on. I'm working with a young man in Bangladesh, because what is really choking their lives is textile waste. Their rivers are clogged with it. And what we don't realize that is in these poor countries, when the monsoons come, the stuff that is in their landfills and the stuff that is in their rivers just gets washed to the oceans. So our job is to clean them up and change culturally what's happening in those countries. It's a big task. And finally, I want to say that, learning is important, but it is proven that teaching people and educating people is just a minor step on the way to getting them to take action. What gets people to take action is seeing that the parade is starting and they will join in. And so it's really important if you could help share and amplify this message. Try to move people away from single-use plastic into changing how they shop, become conscious buyers, and help, if you can, to spread the word. I'm happy to go out and talk with any groups about this. So please help amplify the message. And I will leave you with this. The kids need you. It's their generation, your grandkids. That they're going to inherit this earth. And right now we need to do a lot of remediating the damage that has been done and culturally changing things so we can get a better life for them. Questions? How did I do on time?
Magnificently well. Carl, I will let you handle the Q&A.
All right. And Tami, if you could end your sharing.
Oops, I think I just pushed the wrong button. It says new share. How do I do that?
There's
here we
an
go. I got
arrow.
it. I got it.
Okay, you got it. There you go. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
This way I can see everybody. Okay, so Let me just, we have 2 hands raised already. Antonio, go ahead. 3 now.
So Carl, do you see why I'm confused?
Absolutely.
How and confounded, how do we allow ourselves to get to this situation here? Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. It's an eye-opener, and I appreciate it so much. And it's presentation like this that makes the GGBC so special. And for those of you who are new to GGBC here, this is just a slice of what it's like to be a member of this club. And so tell your friends about our upcoming speakers as well. Thank you so very much for a great informative presentation.
Thank you, Antonio. All right, Bert.
Yeah, I just want thank you. This is very good. I really tried to use no plastics. I would say 3 things of information. My electric car, the body is recycled plastic. And if we had all of our cars done that way, it would be a very efficient way of containing the plastics, as you mentioned. And I think it's a good idea. But as I said before, this is my 2nd car. I've never had a problem with it, and they don't dent. I mean, you could run anything into it. Secondly, I'd recommend a vegan diet where you're buying fresh vegetables, because virtually anything you do with an animal has some kind of plastic wrapped around it, and it's probably the lowest level. And lastly, my outside decks and stuff are all Trex, and it is a super thing to use for your decks and everything else. So thank you very much for your presentation. I follow plastics pretty closely. Did a great job.
Can I
Thank you,
ask what car do you have?
I have what's called a Think, TH exclamation point NK. It's from Norway.
That is very, very cool. And
Yeah,
I also want to comment on on the food aspect. Is I had a long conversation with waste management here on the peninsula. We were trying to start a styrofoam collection process, which if anyone's interested, I could talk about that, but it didn't fly. But anyway, what he came up with, he says, if you want to have the greatest impact on the environment, it would be to work with your local restaurants to to compost and people to compost and keep food waste out of the landfills. So
Yeah,
yes, composting is
home,
very important.
I have home compost as well as, and then I do the one that goes to Recology with milk cartons, and it works. Yeah, you're exactly right. It works very well. I really support what you're saying. It's a great idea.
Thank you.
Okay, next is Pete.
Okay, thanks, Carl. I really don't have a question. I just have a few comments. I spent before, my other life was in the waste management business. Spent 44 years working for the predecessors to Recology up to finally Recology. And I can tell you that probably the greatest evil in recycling or attempting to recycle styrofoam is just, I can't tell you how much we hated styrofoam. And because there's nothing you could do with it. It's one of these things that the manufacturers say, oh yeah, you can recycle it. Yeah, right. Find somebody that'll buy it. I mean, you got to complete the whole circle there. So yeah, you can pull it out of the waste stream and you can bale it and sort it and do all this good stuff. But if you don't have a buyer, I mean, where does it end up? It ends up in a landfill. And so plastic, I just have to say, irritates me. Plastic bags, they go through the sorting machines and they gum them up, which means you have to stop sorting and then you got to clear your machine and spend money in clearing your machine. So yeah, plastic bags, evil. Styrofoam. We had a little machine that took care of making styrofoam blocks that were, in theory, people would buy them or companies would buy them and they would get the raw material that they could use, the styrofoam that was recycled. Well, we found that in this little tiny machine that we had, it was the highest net energy consumer of anything in that plant. We had giant conveyors, trommels, all this stuff, and this little dinky styrofoam furnace pulled more electricity than they did. So yeah, I stand up here, reuse, recycle, stay away from plastic if you can, because it's just the most evil product. And you know, microplastics, very dangerous. We have them in our blood. I can't tell you the damage that plastic has done.
I want to make a couple of comments. Yes, we wanted to address styrofoam, but styrofoam is the perfect example of peeling back the layers. You have to keep asking questions, because some people will say, oh yeah, we recycle it. Well, we did a lot of phone calls, and I'm just going to put it into 2 or 3 sentences. Yeah, you have to pay them to take it. And then they will maybe put it through this densifier machine, which turns out like a toothpaste. It chews it out and then it hardens. And then typically it just goes to landfill that way. The other thing, we found somebody that we could pay them to take it, and they put it through a densifier, they break it down into small little pellets, and then they ship it across the ocean to Malaysia, where then they turn it into product, and then they will throw away the stuff that doesn't get used, and who knows. So now we have this carbon footprint of the styrofoam stuff. Styrofoam is awful. And you are right that the key word that here with any of this recycling stuff is, who's the buyer? Do they have a market for this stuff? And this is why 1 and 2 is the thing that's going to have most of the chance to get recycled, because there's actually a market for it. But unfortunately, that market is the stuff that's going to be brought into our homes and expose us to the chemicals and the plastic and the nanoplastics in our homes. And then I do want to comment on plastic bags. People used to say or think that you could put them all together in one bag and then put them in the recycling. All that does is help them sort it out, because then they're going to put it into landfill. It messes up the machines. It makes them shut down their businesses for a day or two while they ungum these machines. Do not put plastic bags in recycling, and also don't put your recycling in plastic bags. It only first of all, it's just a single use of another plastic bag. And also, if it gets there, the truck's going to go in there and empty out all this stuff. If they see stuff in a plastic bag, they're not going to open it up for you. They're just going to take it and put it in landfill. So just put your recycling loose in your recycling bin. And for that matter, if your garbage is pretty clean like ours is, I do the old-fashioned thing of just taking my garbage out and emptying it and reusing the same plastic bag. So these are things that you can do to reduce impact on the waste management side. Sorry, thank you for letting me cover those points.
Okay. Now, I have a quick question for you, Tami, because people listening to this, there's some objections, mental objections that they might have, such as fast food. Well, now fast food, and takeout delivery. This is a huge industry. What's the alternative? What is the alternative to those containers that they're using now? Is anyone working on a paper-based way of doing it?
I think there are definitely products out there, and there's a lot of pushback from companies or from restaurants, because they've done it the same way over and over again. But I think we have faced through our society over the many hundreds of years of transition and seeing, oh, this is not good for us. We need to transition away from this stuff. It's, to me, plastics is almost like tobacco. We were told that it was cool until we realized it wasn't cool. And somebody had to be held accountable and do a whole marketing thing to get people to not start, and then how to stop. Secondhand smoke, sugary diet sodas, all that stuff. We had to keep educating against these new products coming out on the market. So how do restaurants transition? There's just one of my favorite sayings is those who say it can't be done shouldn't stop those who are already doing it. You know, there are restaurants out there already putting things in paper-based stuff. You can have paraffin liners, other things that don't have these kind of phthalates and PFAS chemicals in them. And they're already doing it. We just got to get other people to get on board.
Yes, it seems to me spotlighting the ones that are doing it right would be a good deal, because I'm certain their sales would go up if people knew they were doing the right thing. I can tell you here in Hawaii, they're very serious about the environment here, very serious. And you will not find a plastic bag here.
Yeah.
You simply will
Hallelujah.
not.
So, just so you know, Hawaii is my happy place. And I sit
Yeah.
there in that ocean and I'm almost teary because it's so beautiful. And I just hate to think of what's happening around the world. Okay, sorry. Next.
Yeah, well, and it's because they've made it clear to everyone, there are these small patches of land out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. What are you going to do with this stuff?
Yeah.
And you know, people got it. So yeah, okay. So on to our next question. Susan, did you want to ask?
You know, if you go to the Monterey Bay Aquarium, there is what the plastics do to the fish, etc., in the ocean is simply shocking. But they have the most beautiful sculptures made by artists out of the plastic they retrieve just from the ocean. And it's we're disrespectful of the environment. And thanks for the guilt trip about plastic bottles.
Yeah. You know, I'll keep making comments here as I can. Two things. One is, yes, I hope to be working with the aquarium soon. And I'm presenting to the Rotary in Monterey on Friday, actually. So yes, I've seen those plastic sculptures, and I think it's interesting. The person I'm working with on the Bangladesh for the global grant is that's one of the things he wants to do is collect the textiles and the plastic waste and build. And he's shown me some of the sculptures that he has seen that they want to have artists make for education. You have a lot of people who don't read or write, so you can't go out there and hand them stuff, and they don't have televisions. There has to be some community way to educate people on plastic. The other thing is it's not just the water bottles, and the number one polluter for 5 years running all around the world is Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is Fanta and Minute Maid and Dasani water and every kind of electrolyte water, Powerade. I mean, they have a conglomeration of different products, and those products are the litter all around the world. They're the number one problem. All right, next question.
All right, Janelle. You unmute yourself, Janelle.
Yeah. Clarification, please. And thank you for your sobering talk. It really was sobering to me. And then I have two quick questions, but the clarification is that you said in certain places they're building the eco bricks and they're building pathways. And I'm wondering about all the heat that penetrates those products. And then you had those little kids walking in bare feet on those plastics. And I'm just wondering, doesn't that, you said it heat makes all those particles come out, and doesn't that then isn't this just another way of us pushing it down into the future so we won't know what's happening? So that's the clarification. Second question, real quickly, are the plastic people working on a concept of what's the tipping point for when we've gone so far with plastic, we're not coming back from this? And I'm wondering if that has happened. And then the third question, is there an alternative to using saran wrap? That's plastic for sure.
Oh, absolutely. And you should not put that in the microwave over your food at all, yeah. Okay, first of all, the paths. I don't want to, I'll use the expression again. It might be a bit of the, trade a devil for the note, for the devil that you don't know. But the reality is this plastic is so polluting and choking their environments. There's two things. There's plastic that we export, but also there is all the plastic goods, products that are being brought into these communities who don't have any infrastructure of what to do with it. I'm going to use the other global grant thing that I'm working on, which is in a refugee camp in Uganda. Their food is delivered by the World Health Organization, and it all comes in plastic. So it's brought in, it's left there, they leave. What do they do with all this stuff? So if you can then at least get some kind of use for it, either as eco bricks or as a pathway. I mean, not all these communities, kids are traveling without shoes, and I get that. But at least it's minimized or consolidated it, made a use of it, so it's not a blight, it's not in their water, that kind of thing. So that's why it's somewhat of a more positive outcome. As for what is the tipping point, there are things called novel entities. And those are areas where the earth has been divided into like temperature and different facets of where we have impacted these novel entities. Plastic is one of them, and we've already exceeded it. So if that's not good, that's why we have to get this word out there, and talking recycling is something, yes, it empowers people. It makes us feel like we're doing something, but it is an absolute drop in the bucket to the rest of what we need to do. Third thing was you asked about saran wrap. I haven't used saran wrap or a new Ziploc bag or anything for years. There are silicone covers. I would buy the silicone covers. If I put something in the microwave, I have little ones that I can just, leave it not totally on the top. But you leave it so little air can come up, and those silicone covers you can buy anywhere. I use silicone things to put in my food in. Beeswax is another. I love my beeswax wrap. I use it constantly, and you go through them and you just get new ones. They're compostable because they're beeswax. And I wrap everything, my cut avocado, and I put that back in my refrigerator, and all good. So no, I haven't bought a new piece of plastic in forever. I'm not a zealot. I'm not that kind of person, but I figured if I could find a way to do it, then anyone can do it.
Can I just ask you, so if we take more responsibility for it ourselves, isn't this the same thing as us saying, we'll take care of all the poor starving children in the world and we'll leave the government out of the mix? And it does seem to me that we've got to get the government involved more in these things than putting the burden on individual humans. We do that with so many problems and we think we've solved them.
Yeah, there was a talk that I listened to not too long ago talking about the whole marketing narrative of putting the responsibility onto the consumer. And most of us are at the age where we remember the Indian with the tear with them coming down his face and, don't litter, teaching us not to litter. All that was designed so that we would put the responsibility of litter and impact on the consumer. But we have to, Coca-Cola actually commissioned one that's considered one of the first environmental surveys, and that was based upon the returnable bottle to see whether or not it would work, because the CEO at Coke at the time said, we are desecrating our world, and if we don't do something now, we're going to be very sorry for our future generations. They put out that survey. It found that the recycling return your bottle system worked, and they still killed it for the profit because plastic was cheaper to transport. So he went back in his own words. So that's a company taking responsibility and chose not to do it. And when you look at what's happening like in the Gulf of Mexico and all along the Mississippi River, these companies need to be held accountable. But how many Diane Wilsons are there in the world willing to fight? But it was her livelihood. She was a fisherwoman. And she went out at night and took pictures of the sewage and the nurdles, or these plastic pellets, being put out into the water. But that's what it took to make change.
Thank you.
All right, and we'll go over to the next room to Patricia.
Bill Buchanan had his hand up before me, Carl.
Bill, are you there?
All
I
right,
don't
well, if
think
Bill
so.
has left us, I will take over. So one, I'd like to acknowledge that Claudette Good O'Neill, Doug Bowers, and Carol Keeley have joined us, and Janice Litvin, who is also still in Albuquerque. She stayed a couple of days to play. I stayed a couple of days to play and work. Anyway, a couple of questions, Tammy. One, wonderful presentation. And nobody's ever noticed, but I'm a great consumer of cosmetics. So how do I know I am selecting the best cosmetics? That's the first question. And secondly, I was listening to your music. You are a fabulous singer and songwriter. I'd like you to make a comment about how that part of your life fits in. Cosmetics first.
Cosmetics first. There was an app, and I think it's kind of sort of a crowdsourcing app, to where when you put it on your product, it will tell you whether or not it has microbeads in it.
Mm.
And if it doesn't, then they will add it to the database to that they can look into it. And I'm looking at my phone right now just to see if I can come up with it quickly. If not, then I will, no, I'm not finding it. But I will try to find out what that is and share it with you. Otherwise, I think you could just go through. I'm sure if you just look online and you say, hey, here's L'Oreal night cream. Does it have microplastics in it? I know I can't remember the answer, but I looked up Dove bar soap. Does it have microplastics in it? So I will try to get that information for you.
Okay.
As far as my music, I've been a songwriter since I was 15 years old. I never wanted the artist's life. So, but I do love writing and I love recording. I love the whole creative process of being a songwriter. The song that you listen to, which is called Part of the Solution, I actually had the beginning to that song for so long, and it was based upon the fact that I was so pissed off about the plastics in the ocean. But I didn't know how to finish it because, number one, I was doing everything that I could. And number two, as a songwriter, I know not to preach. And so it just languished until Black Lives Matter. And with Black Lives Matter, I went, that's an area I don't understand and that I know I can do better at. And I understand the same rage when it comes to feelings and how I just want to solve problems. And so once I realized, and I think like a lot of us, we had to have a reckoning of our thinking and of the way we speak, old sayings that we use, and we think about their origins and we go, oh my gosh, I'm never saying that again. We all had a reckoning to make. So that's a bit about my music. But thank you so much for taking the time to listen.
Do we have any more questions? Yes. Lauren. No, I'm sorry. Are you? Yes, you're Lauren, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's Lauren. Listening to this whole discussion reminds me of the analogy of trying to bail out a boat that has a hole in the bottom. I mean, it seems to me that recycling may be a mitigation, but we really have to get government involved so that we stop the incoming supply. Otherwise, we're just trying to bail out that proverbial boat. So could you comment on that?
Agreed. I don't know what happened to my slide in here, but one of my slides is typically when the bathtub is overflowing, you don't run for a mop, you turn off the faucet. And we're not going to turn the faucet off, but we could certainly slow it down to a trickle or slow it down to a reasonable amount. But yes, that has to stop. Consumers can drive companies to change, and then because there are very few companies will do it on their own accord. But if they see that the trend is moving that way and people are making different buying choices, then they say, well, gosh, no, maybe we should ship sustainably, or look how much these sustainable products are taking off. So that helps. But yes, we have to have the government's change. Now, hopefully the plastic treaty will have teeth in it. And the United States needs to ratify the Basel Convention, right? I should stick a straw poll. How many people know where the #1 place where our plastic goes? Any guesses? The #1 place where we export our plastic is Canada. Where does Canada send it? They send theirs to the United States. It is this weird thing that every day truckloads of plastic goes over the borders back and forth. What machinery do you have? How are you going to reuse it? Well, we've got companies who need this. You've got companies that need that. That's great. But Canada is bound by the Basel Convention and we aren't. So what does the United States do with that plastic that comes in? And this is part of that, trying to unravel the mystery. And believe me, I've done a ton of reading on it and I still end up with the same questions. And what statistics actually support the total picture? Like of what we export, does that come out of how much we make? Or is that in addition to how much we add to landfill? It's all very confusing. The point is we need governments to ban single-use plastics. And then we need people and companies to start putting things in. It can be done. I've bought them. We need companies to embrace it, and then I'll start buying their products again. Hope that helps.
Patricia, you still have a raised hand. Is that a new
Yes,
question?
I raised my hand for Janice Litfin. She said she doesn't have her webcam on because she's washing her hair and packing. However, she's very actively engaged. And her question is, grocery stores are charging 10 cents a bag to discourage plastic bags. Janice wants to know, where does that money go? Does it go to the store?
Yeah, I don't actually know where that is. I would imagine it's the store.
Yeah.
The thing that's frustrating right now is that a lot of communities have banned single-use plastic. And those are the ones that will still say, they'll say on 1 or 2 in them, but that doesn't mean that recyclable. This goes back to the point of just because it has a triangle on it, doesn't mean it can or will be recycled. But now some grocery stores like Safeway drives me nuts. I don't shop at Safeway anymore. I minimize it to next to 0. Because now they have these thicker plastic bags that are a number 4. So they can't even go to Trex. But they get around that whole process by saying, yes, but these are thick enough to be reusable. Okay, well that, 0 gain there. I would say it's actually a net loss. 10 cents or not, it's a loss. But I don't know where the money goes.
Susan. Nope. Okay. Anyone else with a question for Tami? All right. Well, then in that case, let's give her a big, loud applause.
Yay, Tami! Yay, Tami!
Thank you all very much. And please do contact me. Tami Mulcahy at iCloud.com. I can put it in the chat, but if you have a group that needs a speaker, let me know. Help amplify the message.
Good.
Perfect.
Can I say something real quickly? I gave you my email address. I can show you the car.
Oh, cool.
Very good.
And Carl, if I may, For next week, Ron Carr, he needs 2 volunteers. One is going to be selling the other person a product, an idea, and then the other. So he would like to have 2 volunteers, 2 people talking, one selling, one potentially buying. And he would like to talk to them the day before. I have a link. If there are any volunteers, you can send me an email. Don't put it in the chat. Send me an email.
I have a couple of suggestions on that.
Good. Who are they?
Make Antonio the seller.
Well, I was thinking of asking him if no one volunteered.
Yes.
Would you like to be the buyer, Carl?
I don't know. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, I can do that certainly. Why not?
All right. Unless anyone else says no, it has to be me. And I tell you you can email me patricia@fripp.com if you want to. That's an easy email. patricia@fripp.com if you would like to. Otherwise, I will ask Antonio and Carl. Well, this is a spectacular, fun meeting, a serious subject. I don't know. This would be another question if Tami is still with us.
I'm here.
Janelle and I have spent the last couple of days with people who were educating themselves and are vegans now and work very hard. They go to hotels, they have food delivered that they can eat. And I said, well, I'm not a vegetarian, but I don't eat much meat. But I love fish. And then they started scaring me about fish because of what they're consuming in the ocean. So any comment about those of us who are concerned with being healthy in later life, what you would suggest we eat and do?
Yeah, that is an excellent question, and I will tell you that it is one that I have considered. We don't eat much meat from a health perspective and now from an environmental perspective, but we're not vegetarians. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. That it is not something that is that pervasive yet. I would say in some communities all over the world that their whole diet is based on fish, especially places like Bangladesh, where it's just infested with plastic. And their fishing communities then are fishing right there where this stuff is dumping into the water. I'd be a little hesitant to be eating a lot of any fish there. I would say just minimize exposure, wild caught, so it's far out in the ocean. And I know, going back to the Monterey Bay Aquarium, I carry their little seafood watch card in my car so that I can just have it when we're out and about, shopping, to say, oh, I don't want that kind of salmon, I want that salmon. And certainly eating healthy is a bit more expensive. But, well, I'm going to take that back. If you make tacos and you make them with black beans and not with a chicken or whatever, it's about the cheapest meal on earth. But you can balance that then by maybe putting it into buying the more expensive salmon piece that comes from a wild caught environment. So it's just thinking a little bit more, like I said, becoming a conscious buyer. The more we start minimizing the toxins in our homes and the plastic exposure, all the better.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have one suggestion for the buyer for next week.
Okay.
Doug Bowers is one of the hardest sells in the world.
Oh, good.
Doug, could you take that on? Plus you're familiar with some of Antonio's techniques on pitching things.
Well, this will be somehow, Ron is going to tie it into his philosophy.
Uh-huh.
So it might not be 100% Antonio that you're,
Yes. Right.
you're going up again. Doug, would you be willing to do that?
I was thinking of volunteering before you assigned it to Carl, so.
Oh,
There you go.
good. All right,
Yes.
Doug, we want a hard nut. Good, perfect. Thank you for your contributions.
Doug is a nut and he's very hard to crack. So there you are.
Thank you.
Okay. So anything else before we end the meeting? Carol, yes.
Yes, good morning. I joined late. I just wanted to announce that at the DeYoung, starting on the 16th, there's a wonderful Irving Penn, the photographer exhibition where I volunteer. I hope everyone gets to see it. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
And
Carol.
if we're making recommendations like that, if you have not seen the film Holdovers, it was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Film. It is one of those films that tends to fly under the radar. I strongly recommend it if it is available for streaming. And Apple just put out a series called Masters of the Sky, which is about American pilots in World War II. And if you want to know what it felt like to be in one of those planes, it is amazing what Spielberg and Hanks as executive producers have done there. It's tremendous. It's tremendous. So
Yeah.
I offer that
Carl?
to you.
Carl,
Yes.
may I add one more thing, please?
Sure.
Excellent presentation. Thank you so much. If you happen to be in Arkansas at the Clinton Library, there was, I don't know if it's still there at the front, and then there was an exhibit inside, an amazing art sculpture of all of the trash from the ocean and inside all the artwork that was done, probably similar to what's coming up at the DeYoung. So very upsetting and sad to see. But thank you again for that. Was a fabulous presentation and excellent slides. Thank you.
Yes, Christine.
Yes, may I make this, let's see, I'm not on mute. Okay, just want to just make a comment. This was one of the most informative, comprehensive, and engaging presentations we've had in a long time, because everybody was getting involved in one way or another, and there was so much information. Anyone who did not walk away with a lot of good content and suggestions and a change in their life in the future really wasn't watching it. I was watching and listening. So I just want to say thank you so very, very much. This is an incredible, incredible presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, with that,
And
if there isn't anything more, again, thank you so much, Tami. We love what you do and the way you do it. Thank you.
yes,
And with that, if there's nothing else, we can adjourn the meeting.
Well, thank you for being such a wonderful meeting manager. Thank you, people, always for keeping everything going back in and hitting the recording. We will now say goodbye to everyone and come in as early as possible. We like you to come in early if you want to have longer conversations. You will probably find Pete and his pals in at 6:30 in the morning, Pacific time. I had the luxury of sleeping in, and New Mexico were a little later. So thank you all. See you next week. Bye.
Well, the sun isn't up here yet, so I'll probably go back to bed. There you go.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Pete.
Mahalo.
thank you. Thank you, everybody.